Good morning, everyone. My name is Andrew Stolfi. I use he, him pronouns, and I'm the director of the state's Department of Consumer and Business Services, as well as the state's insurance commissioner. And it's my pleasure to welcome you on behalf of the agency to our third community engagement open house event. So these open houses are part of the work the department is doing, stemming from House Bill 2167, which is the Racial Justice Council codification bill. That bill directs state agencies to take racial equity considerations in their plans and actions to promote and practice social justice and fairness for underserved and under-resourced communities, such as Black, Indigenous, Latinx, Asian, Pacific Islander, and our tribal communities. We know we can't do this work alone, which is why we're asking for your help. And this open house is one of many chances we're arranging to give us feedback on our work and our budget. So today's open house will start with a short presentation I will give about our agency and our budget and the budget process, followed by presentations by the Division of Financial Regulation, or DFR, and Oregon OSHA. The remaining time of the open house will be a chance to ask questions, get answers, and interact with our division and agency leadership. You're welcome to stay as long as you'd wish and to ask questions at any time. And while today's session will focus on DFR and OSHA, you're welcome to ask questions and provide feedback on any of our programs. And I'll give some time for this after my presentation for anyone who'd like. So please note that we are recording this session so that it can be available for anyone who cannot attend today. And you don't have to only reach out to us through these open houses. You can email dcbs.engagement@dcbs.oregon.gov, and we'll put that in the chat, and then we can route your question to the appropriate division. I also want to note that this is a new process for us, that we know we're probably not going to get it right and get everything right, and that we're very open to hearing from you about how we can do this better. So before I move on, let me pause right now and just see if there are any questions about the process or our agenda for today. And I will keep an eye on the chat, and I know the team is as well. So feel free to put any questions or comments in the chat as well at any time. Okay, so against that background, let's get started then. So I'd first like to tell you a bit more about who we are and what we do. Then I'll talk a bit about our budget, how much it costs to run our agency, how we're funded, how much revenue we generate for the state. Finally, before turning things over to the divisions, I'll share a little bit more about our community engagement goals and next steps. So let's start with a bit more about who we are and what we do. As you can see, there's our org chart on the screen. So DCBS is the state's largest consumer protection, worker safety, and business regulatory agency. And it's safe to say that every Oregonian is affected by the work we do at DCBS in one or more ways, and in many instances in ways they'll never see. It's driven by the broad nature of our mission, which has two halves, to protect consumers and workers, while also supporting a positive business climate. So this slide shows our organizational structure and the many different subject matters we're responsible for, which we generally group into three slightly overlapping buckets. So the blue you can see there, that's the worker protection system. This includes Oregon OSHA, whose mission is to improve workplace safety and health. Oregon OSHA is committed to working with labor, business, and other government agencies in pursuit of that goal. Workers go to Oregon OSHA to report a safety concern at work, learn about workplace rights and responsibilities, and learn about managing workplace safety and health hazards. Employers go to Oregon OSHA to receive help creating a safe and healthy work environment, to find online training resources, and to learn about free, confidential safety consultations. Also included here is the Workers' Compensation Division. They administer and regulate laws and rules that affect workers, employers, insurers, claims examiners, attorneys, medical providers, and others. The Workers' Comp Division ensures that injured workers receive timely and accurate benefits and quality medical care. The division also helps injured workers return to work through incentive programs for employers. Our two ombuds programs fit here as well. one to help small businesses navigate workers' comp issues, and the second, which has historically served as an independent advocate for injured workers dealing with the workers' comp system, that we just this year expanded to also help workers protect their rights under Oregon OSHA's laws and rules. And finally, we also host the Workers' Comp Board, which conducts hearings, case reviews, and mediation services. The board resolves disputes that arise under workers' compensation laws and the Oregon State. Turning now to green, this represents our building safety system. This includes OSHA again, as it sets certain requirements related to safety for buildings that house workers. The Building Codes Division is here as well, of course. It's responsible, along with its 7 governor-appointed, Senate-confirmed boards, for adopting statewide building codes, as well as for overseeing a statewide inspection system, providing tools and assistance to local governments, and issuing plumbing, electrical, and boiler licenses across the state. Consumers might go to the Building Codes Division to find information on building permits and to confirm contractor licenses and inspector certifications. Finally, yellow represents our consumer protection system. BCD is here again due to its role in training and certifying inspectors across the state, as well as its role as a default building department for any county that does not operate one. And the Division of Financial Regulations here, it protects consumers and regulates insurance, state chartered banks and credit unions, trust companies, securities, and consumer financial products and services. Consumers can go to the Division of Financial Regulation to file an insurance or financial services complaint, verify a license, or learn about insurance and financial services. Okay, so that's a bit about who we are and what we do. Now let's talk about our budget. So DCBS is primarily funded by those we regulate and their customers. We are a non-general fund agency, which means we do not rely on state tax or lottery or other revenue to fund our programs. In fact, we bring into the general fund or send directly to other agencies, particularly the Oregon Health Authority and the Office of the State Fire Marshal, much more money than we use to run ourselves. We also receive a healthy amount of federal funds to support our programs and actively try to maximize the amount of federal dollars we can bring in to offset state dollars. So the next slide shows our estimated revenue sources for the current biennium, which runs from July 1st, 2021 through June 30th, 2023. And don't worry about reading all the details on that. But what you can see, what the slide does show, is that we're expecting to collect more than $1.4 billion. What you don't see is that this money that we're collecting is from more than 500 different fees, assessments, or other charges that we collect across our programs. Now, from this $1.4 billion plus that we collect, on the next slide, you'll see we're given about $294 million to run our programs during this biennium, with the rest going directly to the general fund or to other agencies and programs, as I mentioned. And the next slide, as for the money to fund our operations, this slide shows where it goes by division, including the number of full-time staff we've been allocated. Now, all of that budget information I've shared is for the current biennium and what we've already been given. And we're speaking with you, of course, about our next budget. This information is important, however, because the legislature uses something they call our current service line, or CSL, as the base for our next budget, and our CSL is essentially our current budget. So in other words, each budget builds on itself, and we spend most of our time at making a case for any increases in funding or positions from one budget to the next, or sometimes even defending against decreases from one budget to the next. Okay, so that's some background about who we are and what we do, as well as our budget. Now let's talk about our community engagement plan and why we invited you here today. So as I mentioned, the Racial Justice Council Codification Bill directs state agencies to take racial equity considerations in their plans and actions to promote and practice social justice and fairness for underserved and under-resourced communities. This work has been coordinated through the governor's office, where about 26 agencies, including ours, were asked to prepare community engagement plans outlining how they would work towards developing a racial equity impact statement, or REIS, to submit as part of its budget proposal. For this first budget cycle with this new requirement, agencies were asked to identify one program to develop an REIS for as part of its community engagement plan. From the start, however, we have looked at this as more than a budget initiative. We are using it as an opportunity to overhaul how we engage with our staff, especially those from underserved and under-resourced communities. So instead of focusing on one program and developing one REIS, we included 22 different programs across 7 different divisions or units in our community engagement plan, with the goal of increasing our level of engagement across each of these programs, as my colleagues will discuss in a moment. And from these 22 programs, we worked with the governor's office to choose 2 to develop an REIS for as part of this first budget cycle. Those are our Oregon OSHA enforcement program and our Division of Financial Regulation, Consumer Education, and Advocacy program. So that said, we want to hear from you on any and all aspects of our programs that you'd like to discuss or have questions about. So to that end, before turning things over to our divisions, and again, it's the Division of Financial Regulation and Oregon OSHA, who are going to speak next. Let me first ask if anyone here has any questions or wants to provide any feedback on any of the other programs we administer here at DCBS. As I said, I'll keep an eye on the chat in case someone wants to put a question or comment in there, or feel free to raise your hand. Okay, so we're going to keep coming back and make sure that we have plenty of opportunities for comment and feedback as we go along. But with that, if there are no general, oh, I see there's something in the chat, which is our email for our engagement link. All right, so let's now move on to our Division of Financial Regulation. TK, over to you.
Great. Thank you so much, Andrew. And thank you everybody for being here. So good morning. My name is TK Keene. I'm administrator with the Division of Financial Regulation. We're the state's regulator of insurance and financial products, and happy to be here to give you an overview of our current budget and receive whatever points of feedback you might have for us. I'm joined today by Tricia Goldsmith, who's the manager of our education and consumer advocacy section, as well as Alex Chang, who's one of 2 deputies with the division. Next slide, please. Our consumer protection mission, as you can see here, is essentially to ensure that when companies make promises to consumers that they have the money on hand to fulfill those promises, whether it's an insurance product, an investment product, working with a bank or a mortgage lender, any one of the entities we regulate, we work hard to ensure that those companies are well capitalized and operating in a safe and sound manner, and that at the end of the day, they fulfill the promises that they make to consumers. Our regulatory scope is broad, touches on almost every sector of the Oregon economy. In total, we have about 25 different program areas and a staff of 165, which do functions such as conducting examinations for solvency regulation, compliance exams to ensure that our licensees are meeting their obligations under Oregon and federal law, and consumer education and outreach, and advocacy in response to consumer complaints and inquiries. Next slide, please. So our core components for our division are that financial solvency regulation piece, and as well as we look at how banks, insurance companies, mortgage lenders all operate within the state, that they're meeting their capitalization requirements, their bonding requirements, their other insurance requirements, and that the licensees are meeting their obligations if they're individuals that are laid out by statute. I'll talk also a little bit about one of our core components, which is consumer education and advocacy. And starting with advocacy, our advocates handle complaints and inquiries from Oregon consumers who have questions or are experiencing difficulties with entities that are regulated by DFR. In fact, most of the calls to our call center and also email are in the form of inquiries. They're not consumer complaints, people just wanting to know different components of maybe how they would go about getting a mortgage or how they go about selecting the right insurance product for them, or what banks and what bank services may be available to them. So that is really primarily what we do in terms of consumer contacts. And second is those consumer complaints. And so both complaints and inquiries come to us through online complaint forms. They can be mailed in. Occasionally we get referrals from other agencies, such as the Department of Justice. People call us during business hours. We have a live phone call center that's staffed and fields consumer questions and takes complaints in real time. In addition to responding to these inquiries and consumer complaints, the Consumer Education and Outreach section also engages in statewide education as well as online education. And Tricia will get to that in greater detail here in just a few minutes. Next slide, please. So a couple of other programs I wanted to be sure and mention as they really affect the healthcare industry and the affordability that consumers see within that industry. So starting with reinsurance program, we have a state reinsurance program that operates in the health insurance market. It reduces rates in the individual market by 6% using a mix of federal and state dollars. Using this program, we are able to make insurance more affordable to those who are relying on the individual market to purchase their health insurance. The other program I'll mention that's housed within the division is our Prescription Drug Price Transparency program, which operates to surface the costs that exist in the drug price supply chain and shine a light on the entire drug pricing process. This information is then used by policymakers to make decisions about drug pricing with the goal of eventually lowering costs for consumers. So we'll go to the next slide, and I'll go ahead and turn it over to Tricia.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Tricia Goldsmith, and I'm the manager of our Consumer Advocacy and Outreach team. And I'd like to just take a minute to outline a little of what our outreach team does. So our team works across the state, both independently and in partnership with other community organizations to ensure that consumers have access to information about insurance and financial products. Our access to Oregon consumers is facilitated by partnering with nonprofits, trade organizations, associations, local governments, schools, tribal authorities, and other divisions and departments in state government. The outreach team prioritizes working with underserved communities, including Black, Indigenous, and other people of color, immigrants and refugees, underserved youth, and seniors. To promote equity and inclusion in banking, our outreach staff support the coalition of banks and credit unions and nonprofits who form Bank on Oregon. And the purpose of Bank on Oregon is to ensure that everyone has access to safe and affordable financial products and services. The education and outreach efforts also include empowering consumers to become successful homeowners by providing materials to help consumers learn about the mortgage lending process and how to avoid foreclosure. Outreach and advocacy staff work hand in hand as a functional unit to respond to current trends and developments, safeguard consumer protections, and enhance Oregonians' capabilities to access to fair financial and insurance products and services. Next slide, please. I'm excited to share that DFR is rolling out a new program in 2023 to bolster our efforts in providing consumer education to underserved communities. So the division plans to provide financial sponsorships to organizations that currently engage in financial empowerment work, prioritizing organizations that serve underserved communities. DFR has committed funds to award partnerships to up to 5 organizations for 1-year contracts at $25,000 each. The program is expected to be in place for at least 3 years, and applicants can apply each year. Our goal is to empower consumers in underserved communities to make decisions about financial services and products that are right for them, We want to increase the capacity of community-based organizations to provide financial education relating to insurance, investment, and credit products. We'd also like to raise awareness of scams and promote the availability of DFR services and resources, such as our consumer advocacy team. Next slide. Passed over to Alex.
Hi, everybody. Alex Chang, Deputy Administrator for DFR. Wanted to share a little bit about DFR's proposed budget. As Andrew mentioned, part of our biennial budgeting process, DCBS submits any increase in staffing needs to the legislature. Even though our division, much like most of DCBS, is funded by licensing fees from our regulated industries, we need to get legislative approval for any changes in our budget. DFR is requesting 10 new positions to support new programs the legislature has created over the past several years, and to also support growth in certain industries and the increasing complexity of the financial services sector. So first kind of bucket of new position requests, the division is requesting 2 additional advocates to handle insurance, bank, credit union, and securities complaints. We are also requesting 2 additional financial education and outreach coordinators, which will allow the division to provide needed resources to engage in our communities, support our sponsorship program, help educate Oregonians, teach about disaster preparedness, and respond when disasters occur. To help oversee the new staff, we're also requesting an additional manager who will help balance out staff to manager ratios in that department. The division is also requesting 2 new financial examiners for the non-depository program to keep pace with the growing number of licensees. Our insurance analysts review routine quarterly and annual filings from insurance companies to ensure that they are financially sound, and we are seeking an additional senior financial analyst to handle an increase in filings. And then finally, as part of our duty to make sure that state chartered banks and credit unions are operating in a safe and sound manner, we examine and assess their IT security systems. Cyber attacks are on the rise, and IT systems are becoming more complex. So the division is requesting an additional staff to take on the increasing complexity in IT security that needs to be examined. Next slide, please. I also wanted to share with you a little bit about our legislative agenda for the 2023 legislative session. As you may know, state agencies in Oregon are able to submit legislative proposals for consideration by the legislature. And pending approval from the governor's office, we have prepared 2 legislative concepts and 7 additional placeholders for the 2023 session. So just to share a few with you, I'll start with fair auto insurance rating. This concept is intended to address premium rating practices that have a disproportionate negative impact on communities of color and other disadvantaged groups by prohibiting the use of rating factors such as credit score, occupation, or home ownership. This concept, which is a redux of our 2021 agency bill, would require that a majority of the auto premium rate be based on factors directly related to safe driving. Also wanted to highlight 2 of our placeholders. The first relates with network advocacy, and this deals with health insurance companies and the provider networks that they have. In 2015, Oregon passed a network adequacy law to make sure that consumers have access to the healthcare needs, to have access to providers to treat the healthcare needs that they have. And so this legislative concept is intended to take the next steps to provide better oversight over health insurance providers And key topics will include applying the law to large group health plans, improving enforceability of network adequacy standards, and addressing issues of diversity, equity, and inclusion in network design and healthcare access. And then finally, we also have a more general health insurance update placeholder. This concept is, we like to have a placeholder in place to account for any technical changes that result from changes to the Affordable Care Act or other federal changes that might be out there. So we can make sure to align our Oregon insurance code with those federal standards. So I'll move on to the next slide, which is give folks an opportunity to ask any questions or provide any comments.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you, Alex and team. So let's open it up now. It's a lot of information shared about DFR and what it's doing, especially its new sponsorship program and other budget related asks. Let's see if there are any questions or comments from anyone. Feel free to put something in the chat or raise your hand or just start speaking. And we will have a lot more time at the end as well. So we've got one more division, Oregon OSHA, which is going to talk a bit. And then we'll have more time after that for any other comments or questions. But as I said, pause right now to see if anyone wants to ask DFR folks a question or share a comment. Okay, well, they will be here until the end of our time together. So while you're listening to Oregon OSHA, you have a question pop into your mind or want to share something, as I said, feel free to throw it in the chat or raise your hand and we can get back to you after that. All right, so let's move on now to Oregon OSHA. Renee, over to you.
Thanks, Andrew. Good morning. My name is Renee Stapleton, and I'm the acting administrator for Oregon OSHA, she, her, hers. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. We are interested in hearing any feedback you have on our current budget or any information that you want to provide towards Oregon OSHA. Next slide. Oregon OSHA's mission is to improve worker safety and health for everyone in Oregon. And we are committed to working with labor and business and other government agencies to help achieve this goal so we can ensure that workers come home every day. We regulate nearly every workplace in Oregon, with a few exceptions relating to tribal communities and navigable waterways and railroads. All of our programs have an impact on all workers in Oregon and have a particular impact in the underserved and underrepresented communities. Next slide. There are a number of components in our program where we have several different divisions amongst ourselves. One that is a primary focus for Oregon OSHA is our enforcement program. We are a regulatory agency. We inspect workplaces for safety and health hazards. And we do that in a number of ways. We respond to fatalities and accidents. We are responsive to complaints. We accept confidential complaints from anyone who is interested in filing a complaint, and we hold their information confidential if that's what they choose. We respond to referrals, which are agencies or other governmental entities that have safety and health concerns of a particular workplace. We also have a prioritization list for our scheduled inspections to make sure that we're getting to those employers with the most likely risk of injury and illness. And then we lastly follow up with our various inspections. We do follow-up inspections to ensure that employers abate hazards. One other thing that our compliance officers do is they offer abatement assistance. So not only are they providing regulatory experience, they are also helping employers ensure safety and health in the workplace. They are doing this through an awful lot of education and nurturing through the process. Our focus that we've been working on for quite some time is trying to bring in more bilingual staff members. We recognize the more opportunities that we have for bilingual staff members to conduct interviews is more reassuring for workers to reach out in their native language. We are continuing to do that on our recruitments, and we are interested in getting as many people as we can that have bilingual opportunities. Another area that we are focusing on in our enforcement program is training staff to recognize the vulnerable workers during inspections and putting an emphasis into including them in interviews so we can hear the kinds of experiences they are having and try and work through any safety and health hazards that they might be faced with. Next slide. The other side of our program has a consultation component, and this is operated entirely separate from enforcement. Employers can reach out to our consultation team and request free confidential consults. And this is an opportunity for an employer to be proactive and work through any kind of safety and health hazards before enforcement visits, or there is a complaint, or unfortunately, hopefully we can get in front of any kind of accidents and those types of issues. The consultation program offers safety consults, industrial hygiene, which is more of the health hazards such as chemicals or hearing conservation, respiratory protection. Safety is more of the immediate hazards, machine guarding, lockout, tagout, walking, working surfaces, those types of things. But we also offer ergonomics, which is a significant group of workers' compensation claims that workers are exposed to repetitive injuries with musculoskeletal disorders. So ergonomic consultations are available statewide. And then lastly, process safety management is a unique kind of consultation because it is to stop the release of really hazardous chemicals. We hear about it in ammonia and various kinds of components along those lines. There is a different level of safety and health that needs to be managed, and the consultation staff are really versed in trying to work through those issues. Just like the enforcement program and everything that Oregon OSHA does, our objective in consultation is to reduce occupational safety and health injuries and illnesses. We want to help employers be self-sufficient, and we help develop safety and health programs and management systems so they can progress through their work environment and build on their own so they can reduce injuries and illnesses without the need of Oregon OSHA. Next slide. Our public education department is one that is front-facing that a lot of people engage with because we offer free on-site training. We offer virtual training and online education and multimedia training classes. Many of these are offered in Spanish, and over the last few years, these opportunities have really exploded with providing more than what we have been able to provide in the past. And we're very fortunate to have some staff that can really help us get the Spanish offerings out to community members. Next slide. Our resource center is another avenue that employers and employees can access. We offer safety and health publications. We send them out. They're also available online. We have training videos and video streaming services that can be accessed. We will send videos to employers or employees. We also have the streaming that's available, so it's a little bit easier on demand. That is on our website. The lending library is part of that video transfer where we're happy to share the videos And then we just have it's kind of like a library where you check them out and then you check them back in. And a lot of these videos are utilized by employers for their training programs. So they might check them out once a year and bring in new staff and have them watch these videos. An awful lot of these videos and streaming content is available in Spanish. And we are working on different languages and trying to prioritize the types of trainings and which ones should be in different languages. That's based on community members' input and what we've been hearing and how we can enhance that service. Next slide. The conference section is another opportunity where we can get out to the community. It is something that has been on hold for a bit due to COVID, but we're getting back out there, and an awful lot of our conferences are they're scattered throughout the state, and we coordinate with other professional safety and health organizations to bring a compilation of safety and health services. Oftentimes there's various tracks that help employers send employees to these conferences, and they can gain some really useful safety and health information kind of in their industry. One thing that we are very excited is that Spanish language conference, which debuted in 2019, was the first of its kind where the entire conference was in Spanish. We spent a lot of time talking about employee rights and providing safety and health training. We are excited to be able to offer that conference again. It will be on November 8th, and there'll be more information coming out soon. It will be here in Salem, but we will be looking at other opportunities in future conferences to possibly travel to different parts of the state to reach more folks. Next slide. The standards and technical section is the kind of the workhorse in the background. We do, all of our rules are promulgated through the technical section, and we do a lot of our publications are built there. We provide technical interpretations of the regulations. In our rulemaking process, we work with employers and employees as well as advocacy groups to help us guided on listening to what would be safe and healthful, which would be protective, how workers would feel about the various regulations. These are activities that happen in our advisory committees on a regular basis. We also are trying to offer public hearings at different times of the day, so we know that workers have difficult schedules to have to navigate, and so we're trying to provide more opportunities that maybe workers can attend our public hearings so we can hear from them firsthand. We also are doing our hearings in Spanish, and we have been part of a bunch of listening sessions where we have orchestrated some conversations to try and get firsthand experiences from workers before we propose a rule. Next slide. So Oregon OSHA is committed to protecting all workers, and we understand that there's inequities between employers and workers, and we want to try and break down those barriers. We want to provide more language services and provide more protective processes for workers. We're interested in hearing what everybody on this call thinks that there's opportunities for improvement. And in our upcoming budget request, we are looking to have a community engagement coordinator that can help bring all these components together and really help us get out to the community members and listen to their input on what's going on. Our proposal would include the community engagement coordinator would help and plan, schedule, facilitate community engagement events and initiatives, coordinate a worker-based advocacy group, as well as along with OSHA leadership, the coordinator would serve as a point of contact for community leaders and labor advocates. We want to develop mechanisms for the collection and evaluation of feedback from the underserved and underrepresented community, And we want to make sure that we're engaged and out there, and this community outreach coordinator can help us get to more places and reach more people. Next slide. And then lastly, I just wanted to touch on our offices. We do have all the offices listed on the screen. Our central administration office is where our technical section is, and our central processing for all of our citations. And the remainder of the offices have an enforcement side and a consultation side, and these are the contact information scattered throughout the state. So with that, I just want to say thank you again for attending, and we really appreciate any feedback that you have.
Thank you, Renee. All right, so time to open things up again for any questions or comments from anyone who's with us today. So like I said, we'll be monitoring the chat if you want to throw a question or comment in there, or please just raise your hand or come off mute and ask away.
Are there any changed budget asks for OSHA?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear the question.
Paloma, you're still muted if you're trying to ask your question again.
I see it in the chat. Are there budget asks for OSHA? Yeah, Renee, do you want to, there's the one position at least and some other things, if you want to maybe summarize those again.
Yes, thank you. Oregon OSHA is interested in pursuing a policy option package for expanding our community engagement, and that would include a community engagement coordinator. So that is the pieces that I was talking about, is how we can get to the community and orchestrate that work a little bit more efficiently and make sure we have clear points of contact for community members.
Thank you, Renee. All right, so more questions or comments, please. Not only for OSHA, for DFR's programs, or for any of the other programs at TCBS as well. Glad to take your questions or comments.
Andrew, can you hear me?
I can, yes.
Okay. My other question is that I think, at least in some of the language and the way that at least OSHA has written rules in my experience in recent years, I don't think is very equitable, because it presumes a level of sophisticated understanding that is not present, and it assumes a level of understanding of OSHA regs and rules and regulations and sort of safety standards. Are there any efforts to change or improve how that is done?
Thanks, and I'll turn over to Renee in a second here, but do you want to point out like that there's different ways to look at this, right? So the rules themselves, as a regulatory agency, just like any regulatory agency, the rules themselves, especially because they do or can eventually lead to legal actions involving an employer who may not be in compliance with that rule, they do have to be, somewhat technical and, legal or precise, which is why we do a lot of work outside of the text in the rules themselves to help explain for workers what their rights are, and for employers what their responsibilities are. But Renee, you can maybe talk a bit about that work outside of the specific intentionally and kind of required kind of legalese and specific language in the rule itself.
Thanks, Andrew. That is a good question. And I can certainly see the perspective on it because some of the language is very precise. So we do put a high focus on once the rules are adopted, we provide supplementary materials and fact sheets, as well as we've done pictograms, we've done posters and things with simplistic messaging to try and engage with other workers, something that would be easier to understand than the complexity of the rule itself. But there's probably always opportunities to simplify the language, even in the rule writing process. So it is it's good feedback to hear, and we want to engage in work that is easy to understand. But as Andrew pointed out, there is some pieces that we have to evaluate in that process. But clear rule writing is our objective. I'm sure that there are times where we're not as clear as we thought we could be, and there's always opportunities for that improvement. So thank you for the suggestion.
Thanks, Renee. All right, let's see who else might have some questions or comments to share with us. I said we're watching the chat, so if you have a question, feel free, or comment, feel free to put it into the chat, and welcome comments or questions on any of our programs, not just OSHA.
Well, I'm not the expert here, but it seems as though the things that you talked about are good to get out to the community. And I don't know that everybody knows the breadth of the information that's available. From my agency, I know we tend to know about certain parts, but not others. But it seems like some of that, I don't have any suggestions, but it seems like being able to get more of this information out to the community, to the breadth of the educational components and the availability of that would be helpful, and that we might be able to be good partners in being able to give that information out to our constituents as well. Does that make sense? I know that even in our agency, we don't always, the things we offer to our staff, we don't even know the depth of all of those. And so we have to constantly go back and say, it means, we have these other 10 things, not just this one thing. And many of us know about OSHA, but we don't know about all these other things. So that would be helpful for families.
No, that is a great comment, and something we're very aware of and are actively trying to come up with any and all ways that we can further increase awareness about just what we're here for, and all the different ways in which we can provide services and assistance to Oregonians. And that's why I said we were particularly excited about this project. And it's a statutory requirement focused on a budget that we've taken and are looking at as an opportunity to increase just overall our community engagement, so that we can better inform community partners and stakeholders, about all the different things that we do. So as you said, you can then share that among the people you serve, and also kind of getting into the communities themselves and sharing information on what we do. Trisha from DFR put in an email about for the outreach and education team. That's a whole team of people who spend the entire year going around the state, speaking with different, community groups and individuals about the services that we offer and what we can do. Renee's got a whole team of folks that do that as well. We have as well Ruth Kemi, who's our multicultural communications officer, and she focuses all of her time and effort on helping to increase awareness of our programs and what we do around the state in multiple languages and ways. So we're looking to increase and further support Ruth as well in her work. So absolutely agree with you and your comment. I really appreciate it. Can assure you it's something that we're looking at, and thank you for joining us, and hope you don't mind if we reach out to you and connect about how we can kind of further work together to let you know about all the things we do so that you can share that as well. So thank you.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. So I'm looking at the chat, appreciate the comment from Kathy around the positive experience working with staff to resolve workers' comp problems. Thank you very much for that. And Kathy as well, appreciate how Ergonomics is leading the nation in regulations to protect workers from heat and smoke. Those are two very important rules. Our heat rule went into effect yesterday, and the smoke rule takes effect July 1. And lots of resources on our website about both those rules, and we're continuing to get the word out as best we can. All right, any more comments or questions from anyone, as said, about any of our programs?
Andrew, this is Jonathan over at Central Cultural. It's good to see you, and I appreciate the years of work. It's always good to see a familiar face still at the agency. And I say this because there's been so many changes, and as we reset, we have a lot of new individuals in space. So I was thinking around all the new small business technical assistance providers who are newer to the sector and don't have the breadth or even understand the resources. So a pathway to build a pathway to build specifically that sector that's entering. The state has done a great effort at bringing 20 partners across the state to work with small businesses in neighborhoods in different issues, and I think a pathway to upscale them. And I say that in the same side as workforce. I've now up to my 7th workforce professional who probably has less than 2 years in workforce. And I'm also looking to bring them up to speed as they themselves are newer to this space. So as the world has changed and reset and we relaunch, there's a great opportunity to bring into the fold a lot of new energy and lots of new people who are either having second careers or resetting where they are in life. We probably, and I was excited to hear the navigation that your agency is thinking across. And as I think about all the resources, I'm glad that I could just call someone and say, hey, where do I go? Because you have so much. And I think adding more navigation will be really, really amazing across the state. So that was just my comments, and keep it up. I think having these dialogues at this is exciting, and having the Spanish language OSHA, it's awesome to bring it back. And we would love to support also in picking maybe one or another language to support, even if it's with interpreting or translation to that process. But thank you.
Thank you so much for being here today and for your comments, especially the positive comments. It's always great to hear. And the team really cares about what they're doing, really committed, and it's good to hear some positive feedback. I'd say would be glad to follow up about any specific and particular ideas you have about how we can better engage small businesses. That's definitely part of our mission and something we care about doing. There is also, and I'll ask someone to throw this in the chat. So we put the engagement email up there. There is just a general DCBS email. So, our website has links to our different sections or different divisions, and each division has general and specific emails to connect. But, given that we do so many different things, we don't expect everyone to know exactly where to go. So if you or anyone else has a question, you even think, well, I don't even know if this is a DCBS issue, you can just send a message. Well, you can reach out to me or anyone else that you know at any time, but you can share and send a message to that general email address. Someone will get that. We'll figure out where it goes, if it goes within DCBS, and if it's not something that DCBS might directly do, we know where to send that and how to connect folks with that. And so always open. There's no wrong door here to receive any comments or questions, or we'll make sure it goes to the right place. And one more thing I will add, just to kind of stress how, in addition to the work we're doing around this and community engagement and getting the word out, we're in the early stages now of a strategic planning exercise for the agency as a whole, and the divisions themselves are doing that. And we're really focusing on our engagement and our equity outreach, and just really excited about that. Like I said, early stages. Internally, we're going to reach out, and anyone who wants to contribute to that will be happy to engage and involve you in that. But our engagement, our communication, our outreach is going to be a big part of that strategic planning exercise as well. And there in the chat, someone, thank you, Jennifer, put in the general DCBS email. That's dcbs.info@dcbs.oregon.gov. Thank you, Jennifer. All right, any more? Let's keep this going. This is great. Any more comments or questions from anyone? And there were a couple more links in the chat put in about some multilingual OSHA material. Okay, well, we're going to stick around as long as I see a comment there, multilingual videos for low literacy levels for Oregon OSHA. That is a great idea. Renee, I don't know if we have any of those right now. I believe we have some Spanish language videos, but can you talk about this at all?
That is a great question. We do have Spanish videos, and we have streaming videos that are also in English and Spanish. For low literacy levels, that is definitely an area that we can explore. When we were working with some components related to worker protection, we did do some videos that had some low literacy and more of a pictogram kind of component, as well as publications, but we have not had those opportunities in recent rulemakings or recent ones. So I think that's a great idea that we could explore. We do have the public education team here that is absolutely dedicated to try and get to underserved communities, and with every publication or video that we create here in-house, we immediately translate it into Spanish, but we can take that extra step and consider how to get it into a lower literacy level. Thank you, Kathy.
And just to add to that, just so folks know, we were talking about English and Spanish. We do have, and we have a lot of bilingual staff, most of which are Spanish speaking, but we do have staff who speak other languages as well. And we do have an arrangement with an external language provider where if someone calls in and needs to speak with us, has a question, is seeking assistance, we can connect with that provider and speak to anyone in any language. So we do have that ability. And Ruth and her team, I mentioned, Multicultural Communications Office, we are expanding the number of languages in which we want to provide materials. We did at a prior open house have a discussion and a great comment from someone about Russian, Ukrainian, and other Eastern European languages, especially in the construction sector, for example. There's a real need for those languages. So that's something that we're looking into. But again, just to stress, we've got the ability to talk to anyone and communicate in any language at any time through this external provider. Okay. Well, it seems like the questions are slowing down. We said we'd be here till 12, and we will hang around for anyone who's got any questions. There's another comment from Kathy: legal marijuana grows in Southern Oregon. Additional outreach through OLCC would be great. We have been working, Renee, maybe this would be a good chance to talk, that there has been a coordinated state discussion and effort behind the scenes on these illegal grows. Renee, maybe you can talk about some of the activities and work that we're doing there.
Thank you. Yes, we've actually been engaged with a lot of enforcement activities in relationship to these illegal grows, but we've also been working with the local law enforcement in the area to try and move forward and provide protections for workers. Additionally, we are amongst a number of different parties for a couple of committees and task forces to try and actually put processes in place to stop the illegal grows. So we certainly are on the regulatory side, but we really want to get ourselves to a point where these illegal grows aren't happening and that workers are protected, because oftentimes it's a labor housing issue for us, let alone other safety and health hazards. So we're working on both sides of that to try and mitigate it, and hopefully we can get ourselves to a point where it is not beneficial to be an illegal grow here in Oregon, and they can close up shop or move on to someplace else where they're not putting people at risk.
Thanks, Renee, and thanks, Kathy, for the question. That's definitely an area we'll keep coordinating and working with our partner agencies to increase awareness about our role, and as Renee said, try to cut down on these being there at all. Okay. Well, as I said, we're going to stick around for as long as people have questions, or as long as people are on the line. I still see there's still a few people. Just a reminder, open to questions or feedback on any of our programs, OSHA, DFR, Workers' Comp Division, Workers' Comp Board, or Ombuds programs, or Building Codes Division, any and all of our programs.
Andrew, if you wouldn't mind, it just occurred to me that it's probably worth sharing our Ag Labor Housing Task Force that we are part of, that the governor's office has asked a number of agencies that relate to the ag labor community, and working with the governor's office and all the agencies that have a part. We just kicked off our first task force meeting 2 weeks ago, and we have several on the calendar going forward. And that has been a really exciting opportunity, because as Oregon OSHA has been working on our labor housing rules, we realize there's a overlap in a lot of different areas that having conversations with agencies has really been proactive and better understand how we come together. And our goals are to look at regulatory gaps, look at any kind of infrastructure issues. There is an ask by the governor's office to have any recommendations, legislative concepts, those types of things towards later in the year. So that's another area to keep in tuned about. And you can check our website. If somebody wouldn't mind putting the task force website, thank you. We'll keep this updated about our progress, and it'll include minutes and information about how far we are coming. But just the first meeting was pretty exciting, just to see how many people are committed to the labor housing and want to improve conditions. And we have so many resources now that we're in the same room together talking about them. I can see this being a really successful process.
Thanks for sharing that, Renee. And you know what, you might as well share a little bit about the legislative concept around witness protection as well. Be a good thing to share.
Sure, thank you. One of the areas that Oregon OSHA is interested in exploring in a legislative concept is how to protect the identifiable information of workers during our inspection activities. Because currently, the information to be used directly for a case is provided to anybody who's interested as soon as we close up our inspection. And so that has the potential of a chilling effect for workers. And if we're unable to substantiate a violation because of that chilling effect, then that means that we might have workers still exposed to a hazard. So we are looking at a legislative concept to provide some protections for the worker on identifiable information. So that way that would be part of the bigger process, so workers have a little bit more comfort in the fact that their personal information is not being released publicly.
So we'll be reaching out to everyone we can about that specific concept to share language and more about the idea, and to hopefully get a broad support for that. I think it's as Renee said, we want to make sure that we're protecting workers as best we can, and if having to provide identifiable information is chilling any workers coming forward to share concerns, we want to remove that barrier. Okay, well, thanks, Renee. Lots of great information. We'll see. We've still got a couple people here. I see people are peeling off, but I said we'll stick around as long as people have comments or questions. I think maybe what we'll do is we'll stop the recording in a minute, and we'll have, as I said, we'll stick around until everyone's gone. But want to thank everyone for showing up and participating today, and especially thank you for your comments and questions. Those are invaluable as we try to figure out how to move forward with our budget and some of these legislative and other proposals. Again, remind you that there are plenty of opportunities to share your feedback. We've provided in the chat our general engagement link, which is dcbs.engagement@dcbs.oregon.gov, as well as our general information email. The slides, which are on the website, have specific contact information for different field offices and individuals as well. As I said, any comments or questions, even if you don't know if it's a DCBS program or service, please send them in, and we'll be sure to respond or point you in the right direction. So with that, let me thank everyone again for joining us. Encourage you to provide more information and feedback as much as you'd like. We will stop the recording right now, and thank you for the comment in the chat. Very much appreciate you sharing that. So with that, I'll stop the recording, and as I said, we'll stick around in case anyone has any more comments or questions. But thank you all very much for joining us.